Hi, my name's Sarah Cabrales, and for my project I chose the Hantavirus because we didn't really go over it. Not a lot of people know about it. It does cause fatal. It's very important that we do know about it because it's possible to contract it from our garages, from outside, and rural areas. So I think it's a great just a great topic to go about. There's not a lot of research, and hopefully we can do more to prevent it, but hopefully, have enough research to maybe have a vaccine. So as a quick overview, the hantavirus is an infectious disease that affects the respiratory system. First things first is the signs and the symptoms. Now, since the hantavirus cases are relatively low, the incubation is unknown, but on the information we do have, symptoms can develop between 1 to 8 weeks after exposure to saliva, urine, fresh droppings of infected rodents. Now, early symptoms include fever, headache, muscle aches, stomach problems, dizziness, and chills. Now, late symptoms include lungs filled with fluid and shortness of breath. Now, its ability to cause disease and multiply within its host. So, the hantavirus progresses rapidly and potentially can cause life-threatening breathing problems. Several types of hantavirus can cause hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Now, it's not the only thing it causes. The hantavirus can cause two major illnesses, which is the hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS for short, or it also can cause hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, so HFRS. So it is an enveloped protein that is endocytosed. Capsids are released in a pH-dependent fashion when the endosome fuses with the lysosome. Now, the viral L protein has endonuclease activity that takes the 5 capsids and primers from cellular mRNAs to transfers them to viral mRNAs. Now, I've got a picture, kind of just of an overview of how it looks. It just kind of shows how it goes through the lungs, and kind of gross it looks. Now, the manner of development of disease or pathogenesis. With the focus of HPS, functional impairment of vascular endothelium, so the blood vessels is a central key. Now, in the fatal cases, a myocardial depressant may have contributed to the cases being more fatal than actually being able to survive. Currently, it's unknown how the hemorrhagic with renal syndrome relates to the viral distribution, immunologic, and pharmacological mediators to vascular permeability. There's just not a lot that we know with this side, but we're getting there. In patients with HPS, there's carpal compartmentalization of a selective immune response, and there is very high level of viral antigens in the pulmonary vasculature. The information suggests a specific attraction of inflammatory cells to the lungs and adherence to the pulmonary microvascular endothelium, or the blood vessels. Now, epidemiology. Now, the hantavirus is an emerging global threat to public health with about 30,000 humans affected annually. In America, the hantavirus may lead to hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, and in Europe and Asia, it's the hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome that's mostly popular there. Infection is primarily through inhalation of aerolized urine, feces of infected rodents. Exposure includes outdoor activities in rural areas and forest areas, places with rodent presence, or infected dust. Only the Andes virus, which is a hantavirus, can be transmitted to through human to human. Now, for diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. But first, let me show you a couple pictures, kind of just to help. Now, this is what I just mentioned about the endothelium, the blood vessels. This is what it's talking about. This is the inner part of the blood vessels it's trying to break through. Now, for coverage, here's a map of kind of the United States and Europe and Asia. Just kind of showing how popular it is. You can see in this section right here that there's no outbreaks. And you see, here we go. And you can see how common it is and how popular it spreads. But it's hard to diagnose since it does reflect flu-like symptoms. So for diagnosis, treatment, and prevention. So a patient only infected for a few days, it's difficult to diagnose because, like I said, the first symptoms, fatigue, muscle aches, fever, all mimic influenza. However, if the patient has exposure to rodent exposure with shortness of breath, that would strongly indicate HPS. For now, there isn't a cure or vaccine for hantavirus. The earlier the patient is brought to intensive care, the better. Patients are incubated and given oxygen to help through respiratory distress. Now, if they've already gone through respiratory distress, it's a little, the treatment for the oxygen is less likely to be effective. Now, prevention includes reservoir control and reducing human exposure. So when you're cleaning like the garages or you're in exposure with like outside rural areas, maybe wearing a mask is very helpful. This has definitely been helpful in China. Vaccination could play a role, just not right now. Hopefully eventually we'll have more on the renal, hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. Right now it's mostly we've got more research to know that it's not always influenza that's causing these symptoms, but prevention is key in how we can reduce outbreaks and hopefully maybe have a cure later on. That's helpful for construction workers, a lot of maybe military that work on site and would be involved with that. Because it's possible to get it from, just working in your garage. I know that I put out rat traps because I work in the yard and rats come in when I open my door. I think it's really gross. They're trying to get out of the cold. I'm trying to get out of the cold. But just prevention and, when you're working, wearing a mask, I know a lot of people don't do it, but there's prevention and education on it. It's very important. That way we're more likely to wear masks and prevent. That way we don't have to wait for a vaccine. But I put, so all my videos, all my pictures are in my reference page, my resource page, and so are all of my citations. If you want to know any more, CDC is a great website. Thank you.